morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Dr. Lisa Coleman, and I'm the Senior Vice President for Global Inclusion and Strategic Innovation at NYU. I use she and her pronouns. I hope that everyone continues to take very good care out there. We are thrilled to welcome you to our Transformation Talk series, where we spotlight leaders to learn from their journeys and gain knowledge about how to be agents working toward transformational change across our organizations. In the Office of Global Inclusion, we engage diversity and inclusion principles with an intersectional focus on nimbleness, inclusivity, resilience, transformation, the growth mindset, design thinking, and adaptivity in all of our work. Transformation Talks is part of our NYU Be Together initiative centering on innovating, transforming, and most importantly, acting together. Today, we have the distinct honor to welcome Aisha Oliver-Staley. Oliver-Staley began as New York University's Senior Vice President and General Counsel and Secretary in January 2021, and we are fortunate to have her join our organization. Prior to joining NYU, Oliver-Staley was the Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer and Deputy General Counsel at Georgia Institute of Technology. At Georgia Tech, she was responsible for the management and governance of its 16 affiliated nonprofit organizations. Oliver-Staley also advised on issues affecting a major research university, including on an international projects, compliance and ethics, real estate finance and development, gifts, export compliance, conflicts of interest, investigations, and personnel matters. Prior to Georgia Tech, Oliver-Staley was an associate at McKenna Long Aldridge LLP, now Dentons in Atlanta, where she worked on general corporate matters for both nonprofit and for-profit organizations, including public-private finance transactions. Oliver-Staley graduated magna cum laude from Morgan State University, where she earned a Bachelor of Science in Business Management, and she received her Juris Doctorate from the Howard University School of Law. And on a personal note, it is a pleasure to have her, as I mentioned earlier, join our community, and it is a pleasure to be in partnership with her on the terrific work that she's already doing here at NYU. And today, we have the pleasure of learning more about her and her leadership journey. So I'd like to begin and welcome and thank you for being with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Lisa.
So I'll begin, as I always do, with each one of our guests we are featuring as part of our Transformation Talk series, as an accomplished and respected leader and change agent. And given the ever-changing, which we know you're very familiar with, global educational landscape related to compliance, the law, ethics, all of the things that we mentioned earlier, how do you define and think about success, progress, transformation within the context of higher education today?
So success and transformation and change, I think for me, and it's not limited just to higher ed, success is a series of small steps or inputs towards a common purpose. That's sort of my general definition of success. You know, you take a look at progress through history and moments of transformation, and you realize that history shows that they never really happen as a single event. But there are a series of inputs, a series of steps taken by many different people across an extended period of time that sort of leads to that moment of significant change or significant transformation or shift. So when I think about success, and I know it's probably not sort of how we typically think about success, I'm always thinking about what am I inputting into the system towards what purpose, right? What am I contributing towards making something better or the ultimate goal or the ultimate transformation? And is that input an input of value and a meaningful input that really does contribute to the ultimate goal of change or transformation? And if I'm doing that and I'm seeing others do that, I deem that to be success. And is it a policy in my world, sort of legal and law and compliance? You know, am I inputting a particular policy that moves the needle? Or am I inputting sort of a conversation that provides clarification around an issue that helps move the needle? Am I providing a talk, for example? What am I inputting into the system? And if I view that input as something that moves us forward or moves us towards the ultimate goal. That's how I'm measuring success. I compare it a lot to exercise, which everybody's familiar with. Exercise is like a series of small steps towards an ultimate goal. And you don't necessarily see the change on the first day or the second day or even the third day that you exercise, but you trust by continually taking those steps, making those inputs towards your health, the ultimate goal of good health will be accomplished. And you're not deemed a failure because it's day 3 and you don't see the results yet, right? The success is that I've done it for another day and I've made a meaningful contribution towards that end. So for me, it's a little bit of a different definition of success, but it's one that has guided me throughout my career.
Thank you so much for that. And that's so important for our emerging leaders, right? The small steps along the way, the contributions that you can make to the greater good, to a common purpose. And thanks for that comparison to exercise. I think it's very, right? It brings the point home, right? We don't wake up after we've lifted weights the first day with the muscles, right? So it's a process. So thanks for reminding us about that input and output process as well. So on to our next question. In our office, and as you know this, we work across the university campuses, across the disciplines and fields. So, and as you think about the development of global leaders, you think about emerging leaders across the work that you do, but as you just mentioned, across fields. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the core strengths, the skills that you see that leaders need to be able to remain nimble and agile, and also, right, recognizing the global shifts that we're seeing in terms of diversification, et cetera?
So it's sort of those core strengths towards the goal of being nimble. I think one of them is sort of the ability to listen to new information, being always open to hearing and processing new information in your decision making. And then also being aware that we all have some sort of blind spot, that we all have some space where we've sort of progressed through our experiences where we may not have had a particular experience, or we may not have traveled a particular road where it's just something that we don't know about. So it's almost being also open to having folks point out that something may be a blind spot for you and you being receptive to hearing that. And I think some of the leaders who are able to be nimble and remain agile are those leaders who are able to take new information, be open to hearing new information and process that information in their decision making. I think as a leader, you can get stuck if you're only focused on doing things the way they've always been done, using the information that you've already had. And an environment in the one in which we live, where there's constant change and constant just new things, we learn new things that we didn't know before, or things that I wasn't aware of before. And being open to, just because something is new doesn't mean it's unimportant, or just because something seems to be a change from what we're familiar with doesn't mean that it is any less worthy of being a factor into leadership decisions. So for me, I would advocate for leaders, as you think about your ability to stay agile and stay nimble and be responsive to the organizations that you lead within the time in which you're leading those organizations, is this constant openness to hearing new things and hearing new information and factoring that information into your processing.
Thank you so much. It's as if we aligned that answer. I will assure the audience we did not. But when we think about design thinking in our practices, it starts with empathy. And empathy is about listening to others and finding that path, and to remain agile and new information. And thank you also for underscoring, we receive new information all the time. That's part of what we do in higher ed. So then how do we bring that to bear upon our decision-making and then the next steps? So again, thank you for that. It's very important for our new leaders to understand. And then that's a process of understanding, especially where we don't know things and how we get that feedback. So again, thank you. Now we're going to turn a little bit to your leadership journey, right? To talk a little bit more about you. And so I'll start this question because one of the things that I love about higher education is this, cross-generational, transgenerational engagement and the collaboration that occurs. You talked in the first answer a little bit about that collaboration, right? Together, people contributing through the small steps to the collective whole. A friend of mine asks this question. And so I start with this question and we'll have you answer this. What would your 8-year-old self think of you today? And as you think about that, tell us a little bit about the arc of your career from 8 to now, right? Some of the challenges that you've negotiated, but some of the things that you're most proud of, some of the things that you have found were, useful as you think about the arc of what you've been able to do in your career and your leadership roles.
My 8-year-old self will probably say, wow. Like, okay. Wow, we started this journey and here we are. Okay. But I think one of the things, I think about through the arc of my career is negotiating that ability to trust my judgment. And, throughout my career, sometimes, if I'm honest, hesitating on trusting myself before I make a decision, and I think over time, as I have, I've learned to be more trustful, learn that if I do the work and I assess effectively and I'm aware of my blind spots and I'm taking in new information before making a decision, that I can't trust my judgment. And there have been times where I have to navigate that, where someone else may say, well, I don't think that's a good idea, or I'm not sure that's a good idea. And sort of, how do I respond to that? Do I cower and say, well, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe that's not the decision I should be making. I think that's one of the spaces I've navigated a lot throughout my career, and as I look back and I think about those places where I did trust my judgment and where, I have landed throughout my career, from making the decision to leave home in Trinidad and Tobago and come to the United States and experience whatever there was here for me to where I am today. I think I'm really proud of having trusted my judgment, being willing to do something different and always being willing to hear new inputs, always being willing to evaluate decisions and before making big decisions, or even some of the small decisions, really thinking through and knowing that even if this decision is the wrong one, or it may not be the best one, it's my decision, and feeling comfortable owning whatever that decision is and where it takes me. So if I go back to the thing that I'm proud of, is making those decisions, trusting my decisions and owning them, sink or swim, I own my decisions. And that has served me well as a leader throughout my career.
What a wonderful and terrific answer, and really about learning to own those decisions, right? And trust oneself. And we know we develop trust of others, but we also have to learn how to trust ourselves as we gain those inputs, right? And figuring out, especially as we're being challenged. So thank you again. Thank you again for that. As we know in our work, and we have this sort of equation that we use, right? You can't have innovation without diverse inputs, right? And you have to think about inclusion and how you're including those inputs, right? And to some degree, right, if you're going to think about what's happening across the global world, we have to innovate in that space, right? We have to innovate because things are changing so rapidly. So as in your role, right, as the Senior Vice President, General Counsel, and Secretary, what role has innovation played in your work? And as you think about the global implications, right, of our work here at NYU, the global network, and your experience in working, right, with research institutions and nonprofit management, governance, et cetera, talk to us a little bit about innovation and how you see that work going forward. And of course, we think about how we have to use innovation to deal with some of the challenges, pandemics, fiscal downturns, all those things, which I know you're very familiar with, right? And help guide us through much of that. So talk to us a little bit about that role of innovation, particularly as we think about diversity and disruption.
That's good. A lot of people, when you think about a lawyer, or you think about attorneys, you don't think innovation is not necessarily the first word that comes to mind. But we're one of those professions that we have to innovate in terms of how we think through problems. No two challenges are alike. No two problems are alike. And that is particularly true in higher education. In higher education, it's almost like every issue, every challenge comes up with a unique set of facts. It's almost unbelievable sometimes. You're like, you don't have the benefit of like, oh, we could use this exact same solution to solve this problem, because there's always some kink that says, okay, this is a little bit different. And the ability to problem solve continuously, myriads of challenges, make decisions that impact people of different walks of life and different experiences in the single community that is NYU globally, does require innovative thinking, because sometimes even, I have to think about, sometimes the answer to a problem is not a legal answer. Sometimes the answer is just common sense. And sometimes I need to draw upon a common sense answer. And sometimes I have to draw upon a legal answer. And sometimes I may need to draw upon a policy answer. But then there's the application of that solution, advising how do we move through this challenge with this particular issue, and sort of all the different aspects of diversity that may be impacting that issue that you need to factor into that issue. And that requires innovation. It requires critical thinking. It requires, how do we handle this matter effectively? And it's not just, the answer to the question is X. It's like, okay, there is this answer, but how do we share that answer? How do we deliver that answer? Is that answer the appropriate answer to this particular set of facts in terms of the delivery of that answer? So I think as lawyers, as the GC, and sort of thinking about diversity and inclusion and how you innovate in terms of addressing challenges, it's that constant awareness that there's no one size fits all solution to anything, to be honest. It's constantly stretching your thinking, again, taking in new information, processing new information, being open to the places, again, where you have a blind spot, and sort of continuous, in higher ed, continuous learning towards effective solutions. So I think innovation is key to that.
And thank you for reminding us that lawyers have to innovate all the time. And I think you're exactly right. Right? People have sometimes a very narrow interpretation of what lawyers do. And thank you for reminding us, right, the difference between a legal decision, a policy decision, right, and then the applications of those, which often can be very different in different circumstances, et cetera. So thank you again. And especially to our emerging leaders, I think it's so important that they understand that it's not a cookie cutter. Not one size does not fit all, as you said, exactly. All right, I can't believe we've come to the end, to our last question. But it's one of my favorite questions, which is, lastly, given your leadership journey, could you share a piece of advice that you wish you had known, or a piece of advice that you were given earlier that you found particularly useful? And then the latter part of this question, because in our office, we emphasize when we talk about diversity and inclusion, equity and access, sometimes people look at it through a problem model, and we try to look at through it a strength and an opportunity model. So talk to us a little bit about things that sustain you and give you joy as well.
A good piece of advice that I learned that was shared with me early in my career is about the importance of relationships. Relationships sometimes allow for discourse that can resolve conflicts or resolve issues or prevent issues from spiraling downwards needlessly, where, it may be a phone call and a conversation. So, I've carried that with me, the importance of maintaining relationships, managing relationships, network, just staying connected to people, because at the end of the day, behind these jobs and these titles and, the work that we do are people. And, connecting with people as they are, I think, has been an important part of my success and some of the best advice that I've ever received. in terms of advice that I would give to others is enjoy the journey. You know, a lot of times as professionals, we're always looking out and what's the next thing, or, you know, we're so busy being busy that we don't take a moment to sort of enjoy what you're doing. Like I'm enjoying being here at NYU. You know, I'm very focused on that and focused even in the midst of challenges and trying to solve complex issues, you know, that I enjoy it, that I take a moment to say, this is something that I enjoy doing and I value it so that I don't miss that as I go through this journey at NYU. And in terms of sustaining me, it's my family. I mean, complete honest, my family. You know, we are scattered all over the world, and sort of the opportunity to use technology to connect, and sort of my home here with my husband, it's just family sustains me every time.
Oh, thank you so much. Relationships and networks, people talk about building your network and your personal boards of directors, posses, all of those things. So thank you for reminding our leaders about those relationships and sustaining those relationships across time.
Right.
Enjoy the journey. Can't say it any better than that. Just enjoy it and do your best to enjoy it. And yes, of course, family, how you create family, how you make family, how you sustain family goes back to those relationships, no matter where they may be in the world, right? So absolutely. Thank you so much for this conversation today. I hope that everyone out there has enjoyed and appreciated this conversation as much as I have, and has learned what part of this is about the learning process, as was emphasized during our conversation, the continual learning process. So we hope you will take away some of these nuggets in your own journey. Thank you for joining us today, General Counsel Oliver-Staley. We are so appreciative. We hope that you out there continue to follow the Office of Global Inclusion for more transformation talks, as well as updates, events, programs, and resources, and that you'll partner with us in our efforts to advance institutional excellence. Thank you again, and please continue to take good care.